I think it's time for a permaculture backyard update. And I'm going to exclude the kitchen gardens because I'm beginning to have so much here to show it. I'm just going to have too long of a video. And we're starting back here where we have the start of our main crop gardens and a number of experiments that I have ongoing. And we have 5 beds in this garden. And in the first one, a combination of beets and peas, and I've already taken out a small harvest of radishes out of it. And in the second bed is a wild combination of potatoes and radishes and onions and beets and carrots. And I've already harvested 2 rounds of radishes. The third one is ready to go here, and shortly we're going to have peas. And the middle bed, that is yacon. This is really special yacon because this is yacon that I grew last year, and then I overwintered the rhizomes. And I must say it was much of a failure for most of the rhizomes to sprout. I only have 12 growing, and I maybe had as many as 100 rhizomes. So I'm not quite doing something right there with the overwintering of them, but we did get 12 through, and I'm going to try a few experiments this winter, holding them in different medium, and we'll see if that doesn't work out better. The fourth bed is a combination of carrots and leeks, and then the last bed I do have peas and beans growing, but we also have this special crop for the first time I'm trying. It's called a chira. Now they've been billed as growing 6 foot tall. You can eat the leaves, the stems, the seeds, and the roots. I've got 5 of them in that last row. We'll see how it goes. Surrounding the entire garden here, this little section, which is about 15 feet by 15 feet, we have grapes growing on the fence. There's blackberries nearly all the way around. There's comfrey, there's burdock, and I have currants in the corner. Let's move this over and see the currants in the corner over here where it's going to be the most shady. And then I have cherry trees along the front line. And in the back and then in a couple of the corners I have kiwi fruit. You have to see this. Come all the way over here to look. See it there. That's a kiwi. This particular one is a red beauty. I tied that string there so that it would follow the string up to the pole instead of getting intertwined with the fence. In the front of the main crop garden here, we have a whole line up of Roma tomatoes. The middle line is sweet peppers, and the outer line, the southern line, are hot peppers. Now how this is going to work here is and there's also onions planted in here, and I've added some borage, and I'm going to be adding some marigolds and probably a few other companion plants to the tomatoes and peppers. But anyways, the idea here is the Romas are going to climb up and be tied to the fence. The sweet peppers are going to be taller, so they're going to get up above the hot peppers in the front, and they're going to be a little moister. They like to have more water. So the tomatoes and the hot peppers in the front are going to be shading the ground, helping them to retain water. And then the hot peppers like it hot and most of the times drier. So they're taking the frontal position, and I mean frontal towards the sun. Or the sun is going to hit them before it hits anything else. There's my water barrel. Picked that up on Craigslist. The guy didn't want it anymore because it buckled in on him. He was using it for sap. And we've already used it extensively. This is the trellis of kiwis. And the fellow that helped bring some kiwis to the property here, I think he's a little bit goofy, because he said, oh, there's a special plant here, and it's a male, it's a Chinese male. If you can get it to grow, it's going to be really nice. So it ends up being, looks like a wild grape. But I do have one Arctic kiwi, which is a male, growing in there. You can see the white leaves. And then one of his females, supposedly females, made it out of the 4 he gave me, and now it's looking like more it's a male. But the other 3 that he gave me died, and I've already replaced them with other females, so it's still going to work out. we've got these strings across so that they follow the strings over to this other fence, and I'm gonna let them hang down that fence so we create kind of a tunnel effect right here. And we might start getting that this year because they're really growing fast. Here it is, just the 10th of June. So, behind our first main crop garden fence here, we have a thicket of honeyberries. And they need to be planted rather close together. They're cross-pollinated. And I already harvested a couple of honeyberries this year. But I think there's some bird that's grabbing them because they're not quite ripening as fast as I had thought they would. And they seem to be disappearing a little bit. So I got to check them more often. To the left here, you can't see them yet, they're just growing. I have a number of blueberries. I think there's 7 or 8 plants in there. Hopefully they grow up tall enough to provide a little bit of shade for honeyberries because they'd rather be shady. And then along the fence I have a lineup of mulberries, blackberries, and grapes. All the way until you see I got those posts sticking out of the ground where I have some kiwis and goji berries, blueberries. And then there's a wild mulberry growing there. I'm going to be layering it for rootstock. This plant here is a lemony quince. Supposed to be very bitter and sour, but if you add enough sugar or honey, you can get a flavor just like a lemon. We're hoping for it. Okay, that's the start of the show here. Oh, he just flew off. That's a house wren. Female generally warns you, get out of my territory like that. Their nest is right here. And they're feeding young ones, let me tell you. They have a non-stop parade of bugs going into those babies. And of course that's going to clean your garden up of pests. You won't need pesticides. Here we have a bed of asparagus. And growing on the ground are peas. Those peas are going to be climbing up those asparagus, so we'll get 2 crops out of here. Ooh, there's that house wren, see that? There you go, there he is. Oh. There's the start of the garden. I have 3 nesting pairs in my backyard right now, so I don't have much bug problems. Okay, on with the show. Okay, this is my second main crop garden. It actually is connected to the first one, and I left the fence there because if a critter gets into one area, they're going to have to figure out how to get into the other. And it actually helped me once with a woodchuck. So now I'm wiring hardware cloth at the bottom to the top fencing. Now we're not having any problems with woodchucks. So here we have 2 rows. We have a row of onions with peas. There's some radishes in there, and I've just planted some Peruvian purple potatoes in there. It was kind of some small, real small ones that I don't think are going to amount to much, but I'm hoping to propagate them, so I planted them. And then the other row to the left is golden beets, and there's some volunteer onions, potato onions, there's peas, there's the larger Peruvian potatoes, and I've already taken a harvest of radishes out of it. And I've got that cover over it because I'm going to be planting herbs pretty soon. Cilantro and basil, and I don't want the sun to get on them to help them to bolt, encourage them to bolt. He just took a bug into the babies. And then in the front we have asparagus and blackberries. On the outer fence here, towards the shed, is planted kiwis and service berries. And those kiwis I want to follow up and over these curved cedar poles, And I want the fruit to be hanging down from them. That way the birds aren't going to have an easy perch to land on to eat my kiwis. I want them hanging. In the path here between two main crop gardens leading to the shed door, and behind the shed, I have on the edges planted josta berries and asparagus. Can't show you any asparagus right now, but I can show you this josta berry. That's leafing out. And there's, I think, 13 josta berries on both sides. And each josta berry got 2 asparagus, one on 4 and one on the fence side. I chose josta berries because they're thornless. And I got a lot of currants already planted, so this is going to be an interesting addition to your taste buds. Oh, back to this other main crop garden. There's my grandma's onions. Those are the ones that have been living as roots for quite some time. What I do is I dig up the roots in August when everything dies out. It might be early September. And then I replant them somewhere else. I keep moving them around. If they really like this spot, I might leave them here for a year or two. We'll see what I do. This here is the future home of a new main crop garden. It's going to be about 15 feet by 15 feet. You see I already got the posts there. Waiting for the fence. Here's the third main crop garden. It's planted heavily with kohlrabi, and there is a good amount of cabbages. There are onions, and there's some milkweed that's coming up that I'm allowing to grow. There's radishes in the background. There's lovage. And I'm incubating a number of nut trees. I also have black locusts in here that I planted the seeds, but they haven't come up yet. All in the same little bed here. Now last year I had 24 kohlrabis. This year I'm up to 60. And what I'm going to be doing is harvesting the kohlrabis as we go. In probably another 2-3 weeks they'll be ready to start harvesting. They'll be the size of your fist. And these are the kind that can grow as large as 20 pounds now. My largest kohlrabi last year was 12 pounds. So I think that had something to do with the growing season being so short. This year we've had an extended warm spring, and I planted them early, so we might get closer to 20 pounds. We'll see what happens. And then also in here along the fences I've got grapevines, and the one that I planted, this is its 3rd summer, that's a Candace. And I have a number of other ones I planted this spring in here. I plan to have that whole shed covered in grapevines as well as the fencing. So I got a little area here that's a kind of a mess, and this area is designated to be kind of a drop-off area for certain things. I'm not planting anything here. Immediately under this fence I have josta berries, and then there's grapes and blackberries that are going to be growing along and up the fence. And then right behind it is my bed of asparagus. Those are Jersey Giants. In the foreground, or I should say in the background, are rhubarb. And I'm allowing the rhubarb to go to seed this year, both to allow the pollinating insects to have meals, as well as I'm going to try to sprout some of these seeds to see what it turns out to be. And there's some asparagus planted in there, and a number of wild weeds. The shelving there, that's actually hiding the very first hugelkultur that I built, but I'm kind of in between things shifting around, so I'm using it as a storage area. I don't know what I'm going to plant there yet. I'm sure the logs are pretty rotted now. I had blueberries on it, but they all failed. I think it got too dry. So I put in a real thick layer of straw over the top, like 5 inches of straw over the top of it, and I'm sure it's moist now. It'll stay moist through the winter, through the summer, and then winter. And I'll probably save it for planting this fall or maybe next spring. This is my Back to Eden garden / hugelkultur. It's a rectangle, approximately 20 by 15 feet. Hugelkultures all the way around. You can see the mounds. And in the center, it's a mixture of wood chips. And then I layered some compost in over those wood chips, and then I put more wood chips on. And in the compost, I buried sticks, which were the largest diameter maybe is 3 inches, down to 1 inches. And then over the top of those composts and sticks, I put another 3 or 4 inches of wood chips. And I've actually had some volunteer potatoes that I've harvested out of here one year, and they're coming up again this year, so this will be the second year that they volunteered themselves up. They've made it through the winter. I'm planning to have this as a large kiwi trellising system here. I've already got kiwis planted. Soon I'm going to be making the trellis. In the background there, that larger tree, that is a nectarine that made it through 2 of the harshest winters I can ever remember having. I actually planted 5 nectarines 3 summers ago. That was the only one to make it through the winter. And then I planted 3 more 2 summers ago. All 3 of those died. And I planted 3 more last summer, and all 3 of those died. So this is the only one that made it. So hopefully it had some fruit and I can replant the seeds. Right here is a bed of gooseberries. There are 10 gooseberry plants on there, 5 different kinds. And they're all fruiting this year. Last year, only 2 of them fruited. I think they were Hanaki Reds. And I went ahead and rooted some of those. So I've got more of those coming. But they're all, everything looks good here. So I'll probably root a little bit of everything this year. In the foreground here, these are my grandma's onions. I planted those from seed, or from bulbils for you scientific types. And then there's some horseradish growing in here. And along the fence I have blackberries. This right here is a very special experiment that I'm conducting. It's going to become a hazelnut thicket. In the center I have expensive hazelnuts, and those are tubed. They cost me $7 a piece. They're billed as being able to grow as much as 5 5-gallon pails full of nuts. Now there's 13 of them in here, and I'm hoping that 1 or 2 of them can do that, and the rest of them will be coppiced. Surrounding the entire core are wild American hazelnuts, and that's to provide the pollen. And no matter which way the wind direction is blowing, the pollen is going to blow into the center to pollinate these special plants. And in the meantime, I'm getting a crop. As they grow, I'm growing onions in here. Look at that. Might get 1 more yet next summer. Might do garlic. This here is the first ever swale that I built. This would have been in summer of 2013. And the mound I seeded with bird's foot trefoil, and you can see it's just starting to come to blossom. Yeah, really beautiful yellow flowers. This whole thing is going to be covered in yellow flowers soon. Now there's a good 18 inches of growth on there. That is preparing the ground for some serious tree growth. Right now I have a hybrid chestnut on it, a cherry, peach, an apple, actually 3 apples that I grafted. And I think that's it. Oh, and a plum. Alright, so you get a better understanding of the continuity of my lot. Here's the garage, that's where we started. The main crop garden's there on the north end of the property, north central. And we just talked about the hazelnuts, which are right here to the right. And then the patch of green that we're going to turn into another garden. Here's the row of hazelnuts, the shed. In the background is the Back to Eden garden. This here is the food forest. That has a combination of pears, plums, nut trees, apple trees, peaches, nectarine. Oh, I've tried nectarines. Nectarines die every year. And the ground cover consists of rhubarb and horseradish and comfrey. And I've got clover. The roots would be the horseradish. There's mints, and the mints I've actually been stepping on them now that we're forming apples on the trees. And we're getting that scent up in the air to confuse the apple maggot fly. Also, the chives are also a confusing plant. You can see there's a lot of those. And let me tell you, I've got all the pollinators that this property ever needs coming and feasting on those chives right now. And they actually last pretty long. I think they've been going for 2 weeks already, and they're right at the peak right now, and probably get another 2 weeks out of them. So that's a month, and then you're going to get another blush of them in September. So it's a really good pollinator plant. This area is, I forget, 35 by 20, and there's a lot of trees packed in here. And I do have one honey locust. I'm going to be keeping that pruned so that there's just a few branches overhanging the apple trees over there. Kind of a hail protective measure that I'm going to take. I'm going to allow it to do a little bit of shading, but not too much, so it's going to be pruned heavily every year. As you can see, I have way too many apples growing on this tree right now. You know, I'm going to be working through them here shortly. I'll be clipping off all the small ones. Maybe I'll allow 2 apples to grow on the thicker stems, and then I'll cut it down to 1 apple to grow on the more limber outer reaches of the branches. Okay, this is the entrance to my forest garden. I got a really big gate here. I had found these monstrous hinges at the thrift shop and thought I'd make use of them. I made a big gate. Alright, so this used to be my main crop garden. Yet, to permaculture zoning, you want to have the lower maintenance food bearing crops in your center core. Need the most maintenance, you want it right next to the house. Main crop garden would be a zone away or 2, and when you get back into these outer reaches, you're looking at mostly perennials. And here there are some potatoes coming up that actually are volunteers from last year. I didn't get them all. So other than that crop, here I have planted asparagus, and there are 100 asparagus planted in 7 of these beds. These beds are about 12 feet long and 4 feet wide. And in the center of the beds I have a walkway, and all these walkways are actually propped up. They have legs on the ends. And these are 4 by 4 inch cedar poles that have been flattened. Their weight is bearing on the legs that are on the ends, and everything else is above ground, so there's no weight. I want as little compaction back here as possible. Soil compaction is the enemy of all plants, or most plants. There are some plants that specialize in that, matter of fact, like thistles. But in here I have a combination of asparagus, josta berries, gooseberries, currants, Nanking cherries, and fruit trees including apple, peaches, plums, pears, and that's it. Oh, crab apples, also crab apples. On the fence we have grapes and blackberries. On the other side of the fence you can see that fence is leaning, and the reason why I did that, actually I learned that in the permaculture manual, but his reasoning was the grapes would hang and the birds wouldn't have a perch to be able to eat the grapes. So that's a good idea, but here it benefits in that it's holding the grapes away from the blackberries, because before I did this, the grapes would always shade the blackberries, and blackberries would be kind of a really weak crop, weak plant. And when I tilted away here last year, the blackberries just took off. I mean, and you just see those long, tall plants those are blackberries. There's going to be a blackberry crop like I've never had in my life right here, right now. And I'm actually tip layering these things to propagate them. And then another benefit is on the shade side of the grapes. Now I have josta berries and gooseberries and currants growing, because they can take the shade. And what I discovered last year, which was really quite amazing, is these bushes that I just mentioned, they leaf out in April already, and they set their fruit. I mean, they've all got fruit that are getting close to ripe already. And the grapes are just starting to leaf out. So they did their work, they got their sun, and now the grapes are going to come and protect them and shade them from the high afternoon sun the rest of the summer. And those plants actually took off last year too. Of course, this is only summer number 2 with this, so maybe some problem will crop up, but right now I'm exceedingly happy with the results. On this side, I'm still looking at annuals. I've got garlic and potato onions, but I'm also nursing 2 beds full of Antonovka apples. That's the only apple tree that I know of that has a taproot. In the foreground here, I'm nursing kiwi fruit from a kiwi trellis. I got to show you my potato onions. I'm really happy with them. So 4 summers ago, I got an order of potato onions from the Maine potato lady. And I received them in October, and I immediately planted them. After I planted them, I read the directions, and the directions were I was supposed to store them in my basement or in a cool room through the winter, and then plant them in the spring. But I thought, well, what the heck, I'm just going to leave them in. I already planted them, see what happens. If they don't make it, they don't make it. Every single one of them grew. I only ate the smaller ones or those that had a single. These don't grow up and they don't divide. They grow up, but they don't divide. And all the ones that divided, I replanted. And I did that every year until this last fall. These 2 beds are just chock full of them. The smaller ones are on the background. The bigger ones I planted in the foreground, and I planted them a little farther apart. Now I'm watering them generously, and I'm putting compost on them, so they're going to make it. They're not cramped. And they're starting to seed, and I'm going to clip the seed heads off because I think this is just too intense for them to also go to seed. I had so many left, I planted a couple hundred on another property I have north of here. And I had 2 bags left over, and I put those in storage just in case. But everything came up, and I've planted most of those. I actually gave a bag away to some Amish people that came over and helped me with some windows in my basement. And the rest of them I've already replanted, I think all of them. I think I did. I emptied that bag out. Yeah, those are what's been planted around the tomatoes. Then behind that there's another bed of Antonovka apples. In the background, the fence, I have grapes and currants and gooseberries. This is my monster bed of Jerusalem artichokes. We had a couple of really nice meals this spring. Those roots are really fresh and sweet after they wake up from hibernation. And I also been clipping this down. A lot of the roots are smaller because I clip this down 2 or 3 times a year for mulch or to add to the compost pile. So even though they've been clipped down so many times and harvested so many times, they just keep right on coming. I'm also incubating some Chinese chestnut trees back here, and I've got a small bed of yellow and black raspberries. In the background there's another garden that's been started. My son actually is doing it, so I'm just going to leave him do what he wants. He understands a little bit of the permaculture stuff, so he's kind of got a hybrid permaculture thing and organic gardening thing growing right now. And he's got beds that are really large for a squash. That's okay. Let him do it. Okay, so that's the mainframe tour of my permaculture backyard. I really enjoyed showing this to you. I hope you enjoyed it. And I've got some work to do. I'm going to be making some double burnt bones of the white-tailed deer that I shot last year. So thanks a lot for watching.